You know, people talk about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Yeah, Carol
Right?
Dweck. Yeah.
That's bull, right? It's complete bull. I came from a broken home. So by the time I was 10 years old, I'd lived in 9 different houses. I'd been to 5 different schools. At 21, 1990, I came out of the army and I was earning 130 quid a week in the shoe factory. So I've quadrupled my money. I start doing it and I earned £500 in my first week. This is 1991. I'm like, oh my God. Next thing you know, I'm the top financial advisor in the country. I'm driving around in a 5 Series BMW. I've got a PA. I'm like, my mates thought I was a drug dealer. They're like, what? Here's my thing, right, that sits behind sales. There's a hidden curriculum that sits behind sales that most people haven't got a clue what it is. The point of negotiation is there's predictable responses. That's the only thing about negotiation. Turn the radio off then and start listening and start learning, right? Because this is magic. This will change your life.
It blows my mind that there's such amazing information out there and models and frameworks. You know, you've just talked about Go Big or Go Home, that beautiful book that we'll look and put in the show
Can I
notes.
give you one more thing on it, right?
Please.
So, um,
Okay, team, this week we are going up to the Northern Hemisphere, back to my motherland, actually. I've got a lovely fellow by the name of David Thomson here, and he's a really clever guy. I'm going to get him to introduce himself. He's based just out of London, about 50 miles north in Northampton. David, how are you?
really good, really good. Ever so good. Actually, delighted to be on this podcast with you.
Awesome. Now, so we pestered David, and he said, "Who's this St. John dude like down in New Zealand talking about rural sales and everything else?" Now, David's a pretty clever fella. He's got a very interesting story. So rather than me butcher it, David, can you tell people, as if, just give an introduction to you, where you started and where you've got to? So why
Yeah.
don't you
So, so I'm like, I guess I came from a broken home. So by the time I was 10 years old, I'd lived in 9 different houses. I'd been to 5 different schools. My stepfather was a wife beater and a bully. So he was like, I was in a children's home for a while. I left school at 16 with no qualifications. I wouldn't have gotten any. And at that time, there was a band called Status Quo, and they were singing a song called "You're in the Army Now."
I know the song really well, yeah.
Oh, and it's funny. All my pals were going in the army. Like they all were going in. So there's a guy called Gary Kennedy, another guy called Gonzo, another guy called Matthew Page. All my best mates were going in
They
the
all
army.
sound very polite nicknames, by the way. You must
Yeah,
be
they
very
are. They are. They are. And so they were all going in. And I thought, well, if they're going in the army, don't leave me out here. There was no jobs. You know, UB40 was singing "You Are My 1 in 10," and I was like, I'm gonna have to go in the army. And I went in to go in the army, and as a kid, we were always skin. Like, I mean, we were Brassic Park. You know, you've seen Jurassic Park. We were Brassic Park. I remember we had the electric cut off, like, because we had no money, and so it was like, you know. I remember going and getting paraffin for the telly light because we never had any money, and there was no food banks in those days. It was tough. So really tough upbringing. I joined the army, and two things I wanted to be as a kid, because my stepfather was a wife beater and a bully. I wanted to be tough. So I learned to box in the army, and I was the battalion boxing champion. So I got to vote the best boxer. And then I always wanted to be rich because we were always skin. You know, the answer was no, whatever the question was. You couldn't have anything. Um, at 21, 1990, I came out of the army, and I think they were singing Dirty Cash at the time, and I never had any dirty cash.
This is like an 80s throwback for me
I,
already.
I
Yeah.
know it was, and but I was working in. I don't know if you know Dr. Martens boots, the boots
Yeah, I
with
do.
in
Yeah.
the skinheads used to wear them, and they
They've
were
had a
like,
bit of a revival. I'm showing my boomer age here, but there's a revival. All the kids around here still wear them.
yeah, they
Well,
wear them.
recently. It's a bit like Birkenstocks. They've sort of come back in a rage.
Yeah, so I worked in that boot factory, and I remember working there, and I got given a book by my brother-in-law. He worked for an insurance company, and he sort of gave it to me in a brown paper bag, and it was by a guy called William Clement Stone, and it was called "The Success System That Never Fails." And so he passed it to me like somebody was just throwing away an old bit of rag, and he said, "You should read this." And I read the book, and I sat in the boxes, and it was like October 1990. I'm sat in these boxes in this boot factory, and like in the boot factory, there's a big track goes round. You can smell the leather, you know, the fluorescent lights, and like nobody ever leaves. It's like, you know, that song, "Welcome to the Hotel California." It's a
You
lovely.
can, you can never
You
leave.
never leave, and so nobody ever left there. And it was like, you're going to stay here forever. That was the threat, and I was like, I can't stay here forever. it was better than being in the army because you weren't getting some like posh kid telling you what to do. But it was a nightmare. I hate it. But anyway, so I'm reading this book, and I sat there and I read 65 pages the first day. I was hooked. And the reason I was hooked is because this guy was like, I was born, to a single parent. At 5 years old, he goes into this cafe and gets thrown out, then goes into a cafe again and gets thrown out. And he's trying to sell newspapers. Then he goes in the third time, and all of a sudden he manages to sell the newspapers because one of the like customers in there says, let the kid alone, give him a chance. And that made me think about when I used to go carol singing as a kid, like to get some money because we were always skin, So anyway,
Were you paid to go away or paid to listen? Paid to listen. Which one was it?
no, I was paid to go away.
My
I was
parents
paid,
used to.
well, you got to imagine, I had a big afro and I'm half caste and I'm knocking on the doors in the 70s, and it was like, it probably felt sorry for me, but it
Yeah.
was. But anyway, so I'm sat in the boxes and I'm reading this book about success system that never fails. And it's a brilliant book. And it talks about a positive mental attitude. And this guy, William Clement Stone, he became a billionaire. I'm like, and he talks about sales being a real profession and it being a system. And I'm thinking, well, the army was a system, the shoe factory was a system. So I get a job working for his company as a financial advisor. And then and I didn't do so well, but then I got a job as a mortgage advisor the following year. Now, I couldn't even spell mortgage. I didn't know I'd got a T in it. I didn't even know what a mortgage was. We'd lived in council estates all our life. So anyway, I get this job in this estate agents as a mortgage advisor. I'm like, what do I need to do? And they're like, well, the people will come in there and they'll come into the estate agents and they'll want to buy a house and they'll need to borrow some money from the bank. And all you've got to do is persuade them to let you do the paperwork and you can use any bank and then you just sell them the insurance. And I thought, it's like fogging a mirror. Anybody could do this. So next thing you know, I start doing it and I earned £500 in my first week. This is 1991. I'm like,
It's a
oh
lot of
my God. And I was earning 130 quid a week in the shoe factory. So I've quadrupled my money and I'm thinking, how do I keep this? How? And then somebody said to me, you just copy Sharon. I'm like, no. Where's the system? Because the army was a system. The success system never fails. The shoe factory had a system. So I started studying everything that sat behind sales, pitching, framing, negotiating, neurolinguistic programming, influence, you name it. Next thing you know, I'm the top financial advisor in the country. I'm driving around in a 5 Series BMW. I've got a PA. I'm like, my mates thought I was a drug dealer. They're like, what's he doing here? And when you're like, I can't be the best in the country at this. But then you look at what other people, they didn't know about framing, opening, NLP, future pacing and all that. And so I did well. And then, I did what I thought, well, hold on a minute. Everybody wants to work for somebody. I don't want to work for anybody. So they might as well work for me. So I started a business.
Did you start employing some of your mates?
Well, I employed some of my mates, but what happens is, they see what you've got and they want what you've got. And if you're paying, let's say you're making £1,000 a week and you're paying them 900, and even if you paid them 1,000, they'd want the 1,100 out of it. So
No, everyone's jealous. I think it's that Chris Williamson quote, which I follow, your pommy guys. He said, everyone's jealous of what you've got, but they're not jealous of how you got it.
nah, they're not. And anyway, so I built the business with my mates, as you do find with your mates, and then they leave, and you have to work out how to systemize your business. I read the E-Myth, and I got an E-Myth coach from America. I flew her over and relocated her, and we reversed Google's algorithm. And anyway, we got that business going, and it had its ups and downs. But I sold it. I made a few million quid from it. And then after, when you sell a business, what happens is, believe it or not, it's quite sad. It's nice.
Empty feeling.
But it's quite empty because you don't sort of plan after, you put a load of dough in the bank, then you go and, you think you're invincible and you spend more money than you're worth. Like, oh, fucking hold on a minute, you spend it like water and you're not earning it. And I used to pay myself 20 grand a month netto. So 40 grand a month, I'd pay myself £500,000 quid and I only work Mondays. So working for somebody else doesn't seem like a good idea. So you look and you think, what are you any good at? And what I was really good at was taking ordinary people, normal people, and turning them into superstars. That was my superpower. And then what I would do is I'd make them teach me back what I'd taught to them. So that made such a difference. And so anyway, after that, I thought, well, I'll tell you what I need to do. I need to start a training business. My first client was the British Standards Institute. I helped them increase their sales by 40%. They had 400 salespeople. And then I recognised to scale it, you need technology. And then I thought, if you're going to learn about sales, who's the goddess of persuasion? I thought you learn it from a goddess, and it's Suada. So I created a business called Suada, SUADA.com. And then we started creating some technology so we can teach people to be amazing at sales in a really simple way. And I don't mean just watching videos. I mean, I teach you something, a tiny little bit. You teach me it back. I tell you if you've got it. I teach you something again. You teach me it back. And then what happens is you start rewiring your identity and your skill set. And then all of a sudden, you become amazing at sales.
Broken homes, boxing in battalion army, your stepfather, and then, getting your 500 quid, getting out of Dr. Martens at 130 quid, getting your 500, going, holy smoly, all your mates think you're a drug dealer. Then suddenly you start selling mortgage insurance and mortgages through the real estate business, and you become the number one in the UK. And funny thing is, because obviously I'm a POM, I'm English, but I've been down in New Zealand for a while. And the thing that people forget is in England, there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people fighting, and they want your job. There's there's probably 15, 20 people. Down here, you'd be lucky if there's one or two, because there's only about 5 million of us. And in Australia, there's a lot of POMs in Australia and in New Zealand. But, it's a very competitive market, and, you got to be in touch. So what I want to get in for the listeners, the guys and girls that listen to this, and as you know, they're driving around, they're going from farm to farm. Some of them are really interested in the psychology, the neuro-linguistic program, NLP on this. So what is it, maybe we can start, what is it that the switch that you made on going from sort of like a guy that was in a boot factory, and you decided, I mean, obviously there was pain from your past.
Yeah, no, I've got a great frame for this, right?
Please.
People talk about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Yeah, Carol Dweck,
right? Yeah. Yeah, right. That's bullshit, right? It's complete bullshit, right? And here's why, right? Thinking gets you nothing, right? You can think all you like, but if you're sat on your ass, you aren't doing anything, you don't get anywhere. So you think, I think I can, so I can. It's what you do. So what I learned early on from working with William Clement Stone was a positive mental attitude is the right mental attitude in any given set of circumstance, incorporating the plus traits of life. PMA equals can do, will try, right? So and then what the opposite of that is, people think it's a negative mental attitude, which is the wrong mental attitude in any given set of circumstances, because can't do, why try? But the real opposite of a positive mental attitude is inertia, right? It's when you sit around and you don't do anything, right? So a positive mental attitude is about taking action, right? An action or a series of actions to effect. So I remember watching people walking around in these boots with yellow stitching around them. I thought, I could be here forever. The Hotel California song would come on and everybody in the factory would sing it. And I thought, I cannot stay here and do nothing. I have to have a positive mental attitude. I have to have a can do, will try.
Was it like a blinding flash moment, David?
Yeah, it was.
Because I remember being in a sheet metal factory in Broxbourne on the border of Herts and Essex, and I saw one of the guys that rented one of the sheds from Mum, Dad and the farm. Lovely guy. And I was just like, and he said, come down and do some sheet metal work. And it was the hardest work I'd ever done. I worked there in summer. And I was like, and some of these guys have been there for 20 years, like you. And I was looking around just going, I can't do this. I have to find a better way. But sorry,
And so yes. And then also what I recognized was, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. That's my self-starter. Wish you were better.
Jim Rohn talks about that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I have a self-starter. Like, let's imagine the guys who are driving around, right? And they say, let's imagine they're earning $100,000 a year, and they think, I really need two, right? Chances are there'll be titchy things that you could do to double it. Right. And it is doable. And you think, if the best salesperson was doing exactly the same job that I'm doing, right, could they double it? Is it possible? Right? They could double it. And what I'm saying is, God stood there by you now, whether you're religious or not, there's this mythical figure. And he says, if you're right, you live, you're wrong, you die. Could the best sales? And they go, well, yeah, they could. Is it possible? And you go, do you want it? And they go, well, yeah, I want it. Okay. Then work out the how. And what they'll do is they'll think and act differently. They'll say things differently. They'll have a different mindset. And what I mean by that is and then they'll carry out different actions. And so I thought, well, hold on a minute. Is it possible I could be the top financial advisor in the country? Is it possible? And it's possible. And then it's do the work. Do the work, Jen. And then also, people are way more accessible than you think. Like,
Oh, are they
what?
what? Successful
You've
people
reached
want.
out to me the other side of the world, right? And you said, "Can you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Right? How many people would say yes to you if you asked them? But if you're a nerd and you sit on your ass and you do nothing, right? Don't expect the world to come to you and go, "Well, I'll tell you what, Jono, here you go, my son. You know, St. John, this is for you. I'm just gonna." They're not going to bring it to you. You got to go and do something. And you do something. The amount of people that would love another mate on the other side of the world, you know, in New Zealand, that, you know, if you're ever going to come there and you go, "Can you help me with this? And if you come here, we can go out for a beer." And they go, "Yeah." But no, most people don't fucking ask.
Yes, they're absolutely right. Because the thing is, I mean, my oldest boy, you'll love this. My oldest boy is called Oliver after
Yeah,
Oliver Twist. Don't ask,
yeah,
don't get. And
yeah,
so, actually, his name is Oliver for that reason. And you're so right. And I think why you and I are going to have a great chat is very similar mind, driven, ambitious, don't want to stay stuck. But I scratch my head sometimes and go, if people just did the work, even when they didn't feel like doing it, they would be successful. There are things that I have to do. I have to write books. I have to swim. I have to train. I'm middle aged. I love beer. I love steaks. I'm a
yeah,
typical classic boy.
yeah,
I love all those nice things. And I have to get off my ass. And my salary hasn't been guaranteed for about the last 10 years. And so if I don't get my ask on or get my ask off, like nothing's going to happen. The kids are going to go hungry and there'll be nothing. I can't play office. So that
yeah,
accountability, until you run your own business, I think people don't understand, it's very cushy having a salary, but when you run your own business and you got to hit payroll. But anyway, we don't need to do the world's smallest violin about my world. But I think the thing that matter is that, we talk about, Ant Middleton. I like what he talks about, like, and maybe you do or don't like him, but that mental toughness, that mental resilience, and whether you're a David Goggins fan or a Jocko Willink fan, is actually kicking your own fucking ass and doing what needs to be done. And it's uncomfortable and it's hard. Sorry, David, you can say something.
what I was going to say is there's ants and elephants, right? So sometimes you think I must do this work, right? And there's an ant in it for you. It's like somebody saying to you, "Well, if you do that, you can dip your biscuit in my tea." And you go, "Well, hold on a minute. Fuck off. I don't want it." But if it's an elephant, if it's a really big win, the juice is worth the squeeze, then
Correct.
go after the elephant. And you go, well, and often it's just as easy to get a massive win as it is to get a little titchy win. And people can't be asked because they're not thinking about how could I double it, right? And you think, what would help me double it? What could I learn or do or have that would make me double it? And you go, okay, it would be this. And then you focus on that. And guess what? As you think so, you become, you become what you think about. And you think, well, if you ask a better question, often you get a better answer.
Love that. Listeners, he's a man of my own philosophy here. You've got to ask the right questions to get the right answers. And often we'll get into this, David, like, sales is such a click and word, prediction, pattern recognition, the brain. You cannot bludgeon or bore buyers into buying. If you ask the bullshit questions like, what's your biggest pain point? What keeps you up at night? Or how do we win your business back? Look at David. If for those that are watching this, like, he's just shaking his head going, what on earth are you talking about? So we've got to ask better questions. We've got to be the master of the conversation. Now, David, there's so much I want to talk about what you've just covered in that last bit. Talk to me about identity and possibility. And the fact is, you were using future David as a tool. You were using time as a tool, weren't you? Because
Yeah.
current David wasn't in a good place and was going to be stuck at that bloody boot factory. You said, right, what if I could? And then you realized that actually, if I just made bigger ass and I invested in myself, whether it's your E-Myth coach and bring her over to the UK, but you decided that you were going to take action. But like, that requires you taking a bet on yourself. And so many people are fearful, aren't they? They're fearful because they love status quo, so they stay stuck, don't they? Do you want to talk about that?
People don't. I don't think people do love the status quo, but ultimately, it's your focus of attention. Like, what are you focusing on? Like, I was chatting to one of my pals today in the gym, and he's Gen X, right? And he lost his job 4 months ago, and he was saying to me, "Fucking, I lost my job. It's really hard to get a job," right? And and he's our generation. He wears glasses, little round ones, which make him look a bit older. And he's too vanilla, right? He looks like too many people. 1 million people look like he looks. And he said, "What do you reckon?" I said, "Mate, you couldn't have come at a better time. I said, because I know exactly what to do, but you either need to be outstanding or forget it. And he said, what do you mean? I said, you need to know about influence, the science of influence, social psychology, and open, close, frame, negotiate, future pace, NLP. I said, if you've got a much better narrative, storytelling, I'll tell you a really interesting story. You'll like this and your listeners will like this, right? I'd sold my business, right? And I've gone from jack shit, left school, no qualifications, nothing. I sold my business. And there's a course at Harvard University, right, called Public Narrative. And it is the best storytelling course in the world, right? The best in the world, right? And I thought, the reason it matters is if you're a salesperson, your ability to tell stories, right, is a game changer, right? And I can tell you, we can talk about storytelling if you want. I can share with you what I learned on that. Anyway, so I applied for this course at Harvard. I'm David Thomson. I just sold my business. At the time, I was one of 6 people in the world certified to teach influence under Robert Cialdini. There was only 6 people teaching persuasion and persuasion. He's the guy that helped Obama get elected, $130,000 a day, right? That's what he charges. And I've been personally trained by him to teach persuasion and persuasion. Anyway, so I apply for this course. They come back to me and say, no, we don't think you're a good fit for the program at the minute. And so I have my self-starter. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. I think I'm doing the course. My head is, I just haven't worked out how yet. So I think, I know what I'll do. I'll get Robert Cialdini to write me a letter of introduction to Harvard. You know, he's the world's leading social psychologist on the topic of influence. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll get my friend who's a copywriter, who's the best copywriter in the world, to write me a letter of introduction. I'm getting on the course. I apply again 6 months later. They come back, nah, do one. You're still not getting on it. And I'm like, oh, I am. I just haven't worked out.
Hear that, Mr. Cialdini?
I'm like, hold on a minute. I just persuaded him, and I think, okay, is it possible I could get on this course? And I have this thing, right? It's a really interesting self-starter. I think, let's imagine, right, Sinjin, me and you, right? Have you ever been to Alcatraz?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you know what it's like, right? So imagine me and you are in Alcatraz, and we've got 20 years left to do there. Me and you, and it's now, we're in Alcatraz. And they say, right, Dave Sinjin, you got 20 years in Alcatraz. But if you can work out how to get on that course at Harvard University, we don't care how you get on, right? You don't have to do any more time. You can leave tomorrow. But in Alcatraz, apparently, it's, you know, you can hear people partying in on the bay. You can hear them chinking glasses. You can smell the ladies' perfume. It's supposed to be purgatory. On a Saturday night, you can hear people laughing, right? And you're freezing in this prison cell. So me and you are in Alcatraz, and you think, well, if you can work out how to get on that course, right, you don't have to do any more time. What wouldn't we do to get on that course?
Be highly motivated.
Yeah, of course you would. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting on, and someone worked out how imagine in Alcatraz, and I think, well, I'll tell you what, one of my mates, right, he's worked for one of the big institutes of sport. I wouldn't say his name, but anyway, I reckon I'll get him to get on the course, and then when he gets on the course, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit in there and I'm going to copy the course. So I'm going to nick the course, and I'm having it. So I'll get him to get on the course, and I'll get the course. Right, that's thinking about, you've done it, and you ask yourself, what did I have to do to make that happen? So you have to think about future you, and then, like, you know, the guy says, all right, you know, you thank future you, wish you were better. So you focus on you in the future, and then you go, well, I'm definitely having double my money. I just haven't worked out how yet. What do I need to do? And you start thinking differently. It's almost like you go to the future and then come back to stay and go, right, well, I need to start acting like him.
So how do you teach that? Because I don't think everyone's got that ability to think like that. I think only 5% of the population have got that, but at my best.
Yeah, but so what I have, one of the first things that I teach when I go into when you go into a business, right, what happens is people think that mental attitude is a discretionary function. I'm like, no, it ain't. It has a definition. It's the right mental attitude in any given set of circumstance, incorporating the plus traits of life. PMA equals can do, will try. And then I'll teach them the opposite of that is a negative mental attitude is the wrong mental attitude in any given set of circumstances. NMA equals can't do, why try? Do people agree with that or disagree? And you're asking Socratic questions, so you're going to get a yes. And you go, okay, and the opposite of a positive mental attitude isn't negative mental attitude, it's really inertia, whose best friends was Circe, the Greek goddess who turned men and women into swine, but by people sitting there and doing nothing. Does that make sense? So how do you overcome it? You use a self-starter, a word, a phrase, a piece of music, an inspirational, eye of the tiger, and they go, yeah. Now, when you teach that and you make people teach you it back with images, we call them semiotics, right? What you do is you're embedding a process right, that sounds like a philosophy, right? Because when people are sat and they start bitching, whinging, and moaning about how wrong things are, yeah, so you're rewiring the neural pathways, right? So you're going, right, okay, so here's the gig, Sono, right? So have you got the right mental attitude in a given set of circumstances when you're sitting here whinging about it? Such words as hope, faith, and integrity. Have you got a PMA can do, will try at you? No. And you go, okay, so if you did have, how would you think and act differently? Well, I'd be like, whatever. And you'd say, you're not, you're going inert or you're whinging about it. And most of the time, people aren't moaning about what's wrong. They're just not doing anything to make it different. So they have to take an action. So if you train positive mental attitude as a process, and then you train going the extra mile, I used to be certified to teach Napoleon Hill's science success philosophy as well. So you teach rendering more service and better service, and you pay to render doing it all the time, doing it with a positive mental attitude. What happens is people start thinking differently, and then they start acting differently, and then the outcomes are different. And so you're taking a mindset and a work ethic, and you're turning them into processes to make them non-discretionary.
So there's a
If you're
lot.
running a business and a sales team, it's gold.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, listen to what this guy's saying, because there's a lot of mental here and there's a bit to unpack. But basically, you know, in layman's terms, you have to be able to master your mind and train your brain. And what David's talking about is he's talking about, obviously, that lovely quote by that neuroscientist Herb Keller, you know, neurons that fire together wire together. So if you're going to bitch, moan, and whinge, we call it a BMW, not a 5 Series, but we call it BMW. We're only allowed 15 minutes in our household to have a BMW, and then it's off. We don't talk anymore. And get off your chest. But, you know, what you're doing is it takes as much energy and effort to bitch, moan, and whinge about something is to actually then get the fuck on and do something about something. And so
Yeah.
what I see with my guys, they're predominantly guys that I train, and there's some very clever ladies too, and they usually outsell the guys. That's a generalization, but there's a reason for that in terms of emotional intelligence and all those things. But with my guys, some of them, they stay stuck, that inertia, and they're fearful, and they don't realize the pain. It's like Tony Robbins talks about, the pain of change is obviously less than the pain of staying the same, and they finally ship it. Sometimes it takes them something catastrophic. You know, they lose their jobs, they get divorced, they have a health issue, or they're kicked out of home, or they come out of prison, or whatever it is, or they lose the family farm, God forbid. But they still are too scared to make the next move, and so they stay stuck, and they bitch and moan, and you know, they say they've got 20 years of experience, but I think it was I think it's Brian Tracy or someone like Zig Ziglar saying you don't have 20 years of experience. You've got 2 years of experience done 10 times. So their marketability, their negotiation, their leverage is just not there. They don't have it, and they stay stuck, and they actually start to resent themselves or self-loathe or have low self-esteem. And then that comes in all sorts of different forms with wives and divorces and homes and bouncing from town to town, business to business, because they piss off everyone that they're around. The long question is, how do you help people reprogram their brain to get out of that I'm stuck, poor, woe me? And I suppose it's the PMA that you're talking about.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? So the first thing is you get your head on right, get your head out your ass, get your head on right. So you've got that attitude, right? Then you get your work ethic right. Then you start adding skill to it, right? So I'll call it, like, imagine it's a body. You start adding skill to that body. So you say, right, let's teach you about the science of influence. Let's teach you about the principle of reciprocity. Let's teach you about scarcity, liking, consistency. And so you start understanding, right, things that nobody else understands. And then guess what? When you start thinking differently, you can then start acting differently. Then you add Socrates to it. And then if they've got a sales job already, you start building then what I call models. How do we build your model based on behavioral science so that when you start talking to people, you get very different outcomes, like very, very, very different outcomes. Like, how do you ask for recommendations utilizing behavioral science? So you get all your clients, right, when they're trying to say, you know, if we do a little role play here, right? Let's say you say to me, "Oh, David, thank you today. Thank you for doing
Yeah,
my."
hey, look, Dave, I'm absolutely chuffed with what you've sold me. I love it. I wish I bought it sooner. It's
And so
amazing.
what I'll do, right, and so I neutralize the thank you. I say, no, don't thank me, right, because I'm not taking it, which leaves an open loop in your brain, right? That's what it does. I'll neutralize the thank you, so I'm neutralizing the reciprocity. Don't thank me. If you're really happy with me, here's what I expect you to do. Here's what all my best clients do. If you're really happy, if you're not just blowing smoke at me, here's what I expect you to do, right? In in 3 months' time when we do the review, providing you're still happy with the service I've provided you and everything's okay, here's what I expect you to do. Recommend me, your mate who's a farmer, your next door neighbour who's a farmer, your brother, your sister, whoever it is, recommend me. Because then if you're really happy, then you'll have had a word with them and you say, look, if you really want this service, whatever it is, financial services, whatever it is, you'll say, speak to Dave. Here's what my best clients do. And I'll look at you and I'll go, fair enough. And I'm saying, I'm not asking you now. I'm saying in 3 months' time when we do the review, if I've done fair enough, and then guess what you say, right now? But
No, I love it, listeners.
that's not it. That's not it.
Please go.
Right?
Keep going.
That is not it, right? Because they will get one recommendation for you, right? But who gives a shit? Because one recommendation is not going to change your life. We need to turn them into a machine. So what will happen is you'll speak to them sometime between now and the next 3 months, and they'll get your recommendation and say, here's my mate, Jono, who runs a farm. And you'll say, right, okay, no problems. And he's got this service or this product, whatever that he needs. And this is where the magic starts, right? The rest of it's bullshit. That's just, they're always going to say thank you. You can easily nullify like the reciprocity and leave it as an open loop. The real power starts here. And what it is, you say, look, if my best clients do, and you say, oh yeah, okay, I've got my mate Janet, she runs this farm down the road, she's amazing. And you say, great, would you do a little WhatsApp group? You tell them, do a little WhatsApp group, put me and Janet in together, and they will. And then you speak to Janet, right? You will speak to Janet and say, Janet, I spoke to St. John, he's recommended you, said we're great, love to come and see you, speak to you, whatever. She says, yeah, great, let's do that next Tuesday. You then go back to the guy that recommended you, say, St. John, I'm speaking to Janet next Tuesday, right? Then you go and see Janet on the Tuesday. She agrees you're going to do something for them, going to get all the paperwork together. You go back after that meeting. I've seen her on Tuesday. We've done the paperwork. Bum. Then the thing goes through and it completes. You say, Janet's gone through, it's all gone through and it's now completed. So you've had 3 or 4 more touches. Every time you touch that client, you go back and you feedback. And you say, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's great. We've done the 3-month review with Janet. She's really, really pleased. The next thing you have with that client, they say, I've got another one for you. I've got another one. But you've got to keep doing the 3 or 4 touches afterwards. And if you do those touches and you feed back to the client, what happens is your recommendations then go on steroids and it changes the game. So how do you get all of your clients recommending you? Well, if you get everybody doing that once a year, you double your business. If they do it twice a year, your business goes through the roof, you're exploding. And that's what I did as a financial advisor. So next thing you know, I've got all these people recommending me. And you know, my biggest complaint was, I wish these people would fuck off. I've got everybody keeps saying yes.
Got too much.
Let's go away. I'm doing 7 mortgages in a day. Some people are not doing that in a week or in a month. I'm doing it in a day. I'm going,
because you had a system. Now, just let's break that down, because I understand what you're doing. Some of the listeners, are just going, wow, shit, there's a lot here, and they're driving along. We don't want them to sort of like crash and write things at the same time. There was social proof.
There's 2 principles that are running.
Yeah, tell me about the loop laps, the financial models there.
So the two principles that are running it are the principle of consistency and commitment, in which says people want to be consistent with what they've previously said or done, or Socrates, if you like. Socrates said, if I ask a question or a series of questions to which a prospect will readily agree, then ask a concluding question based on those agreements, I'll receive a desirable response. So if we go back 2,500 years ago, we're utilizing Socrates or consistency. It's the same thing, right? Yeah. And then what we're also doing is reciprocity. People are saying to you, and then you're assigning an identity. That's one of the other things you're doing. You're saying, look, here's what my best clients do. Here's what I expect you to do. And you're nullifying the reciprocity. So they're saying to you, here's what I would like you to do. And you go, no. I'm going to assign you and say, if you're really, really happy, not just blowing smoke up my ass, here's what I expect you to do. Not now, in 3 months' time when I come for the review. And typically what I would do if they've not recommended me is a week before the review, say, John, we're going to be doing our review next week. This is what it is. And they go, yeah, St. John, is that okay? And you go, yeah. And you go, no, obviously you did say you'd be able to recommend me. They go, oh yeah, I did say I'll do that. I'll do it. They'll almost always have somebody for you because that loop is open and running, but it's consistency and commitment and reciprocity. And reciprocity is the law of obligation. We want to repay our debts. If somebody does you a favor, you want to do them a favor back in return. And, and if they don't,
you don't do the same for me. Don't take me.
You say, here's what I expect you to do, and not, you say, if you're really happy what I'm doing, rather than you're doing the same, here's what I expect you to do, right? Recommend me. Right, I'm holding you. I say, here's what I expect you to do. Recommend me, friend, brother, sister, next door neighbour, farmer down the road. It's what my best clients do. You say, not now. In 3 months' time, you soften it, but you're putting the pressure back and going, fuck off. I'm not interested in a bottle of wine or a pat on the back or go and get me some.
Applause.
But what you're doing is you're training them on how to be a good customer, and they're delighted with it. They're delighted, but you need to train them on how to do that, and it's a system, and it's amazing, and you'll get so busy. And then what happens? The next people not price sensitive. Next time you're going to deal with them, they'll be more receptive for the upsell because they're so delighted with what you've done. They're like, oh, thank you, because now they've got all their mates and they can never leave you.
Yes, it reminds me of like the Charlie Munger stuff with the mental models. You know how you wrap up the lattice work, and David, you know what I'm talking about there. But the poor Charlie's Anamac, and Warren Buffett's two eyes.
Great big book, got it in the thing. Yeah, got it.
Mate, it's a weapon of a book, isn't it? Like you can really bosh some people over the head with
It's
that one.
that you kill them.
Yeah, I know you kill them with it, but so I think it's a lovely recommendation system that you've got there. Delayed gratification, identity. Talk to me about. We talked about open loops, closing loops, because obviously the brain and cognitive dissonance and wants to resolve something because of the mental conflict and the cognitive energy involved in that. But talk to me about future pacing. Can you talk to me about that for to understand the concept?
So the best thing about future pacing, there's a model called PIGGY, right? So it's one thing to talk about future pacing, but PIGGY is the ultimate future pacing model to how to bring to bring it alive. So future pacing is basically where you're going ahead of somebody and you're talking to them and you're telling them that, that they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and PIGGY is the model for it. So let's imagine I'm doing a mortgage for you, right?
Sure.
And you say to me, yeah, I want the mortgage, but I don't really want any illness insurance. You can stick out your ass. It's too expensive. I don't want it. And you go, fine, no problems at all. You don't want to argue. So we can go into a future pacing mode here, and we use PIGGY, and we say, look, at the end of the day, I'm not saying it's going to happen to you. Might or might not be something you think about every day. But if you had a heart attack, stroke, cancer, something seriously went wrong with your health, would that cause you a problem? Not now, but we're planning this mortgage now. It's 2026 now. We're planning to 2051. In the event between now and 2051, if you had one of those things, heart attack, stroke, cancer, having a road accident, wheelchair in the rest of your days, you're diagnosed with some shit illness, would it cause you a problem? That's the P. And you go, yeah. And go, what kind of a problem? And you go, well, obviously I wouldn't be going to work. I'd have time off. I'd be ill. And you go, okay, what would the implications be? Right? The implications be, well, I wouldn't have any work. I couldn't pay the mortgage payments. I did whatever. Would you have to give anything up? Oh yeah, obviously I'm not going to be working. I'm giving my job up. And what about kids in school? Do they go on school trips, holidays, nice things? Yeah, right. If you had to give all that, how are you going to feel? And you go, I'm fucking devastated. Is that something you'd want to avoid? Yeah. So that's the PIGGY. So future pacing is about walking somebody through their shitty version of what they think reality is. And you're not telling them wrong. You go, let's just have a little walk through, whatever. And you're future pacing them. When you take them through that model, almost always I go, yeah, well, I hadn't really thought about it like that. And so you're future pacing. So problem, implication, give up, going to feel, something you want to avoid.
Yeah, I love the acronym there. That's so good. And it's like when you sold the business, and then we'll talk about Sueda in a minute. I mean, Dr. Robert Cialdini, it was the first book I ever read, David. It's the first book I read on social. It was influence. Your one was obviously William Clement Stone reading 67 pages off the bat, which I'm pretty impressed by, because that shows me something about you. It's really funny. Like, I bang on to all my groups and my training about readers are leaders, like the wisdom of words and Socratic and mental models and all the stuff that we could jam on and bore everyone senseless. But this stuff makes you money. Like, if you read a book, there is wisdom in that book that literally...
The only thing I would say is I'm dyslexic and shit at reading, so I've never read books.
So do you listen to them?
Yeah, so I listen to audio books. A great audio book I've listened to recently, what I recommend you all listen to, is one called Go Big or Go Home by Diane Candler. Brilliant audio book. And it's about how you create magical moments for people that blow them out the water. Brilliant book. New, amazing, captivating. Listened to it last month. It's the bollocks. It's really good. But I listen to audiobooks. The reason I listen to them is I'm dyslexic, because I move the words around on a page. Like, I'm the kid at school, and the cat went, and people would laugh at me. And I was the hard kid at school as well, so I'd be like laughing again, I'm gonna kick your head in.
I'm gonna knuckle you. Exactly. No, it's. I mean, the thing is, like again, I kind of bang my head and go, if you would just, whether you're listening to books, listening to podcasts, getting your resources, getting mine, whoever's, and you surround yourself with a personal board of advisors, because a lot of this information is free out in the
Yeah,
world. And we do it. You do it generously. Just remember, guys. This guy's wife. It's his It's her birthday today, and he's come on the podcast here at like 8:30 at night in UK. I'm 9:30 in the morning next day in New Zealand. We do this stuff, and I think we do it because we don't want to see people suffer and struggle.
yeah.
But the thing is, you got to get yourself out your own shit. You got to take action, and you got to crack on. And if you don't take action, you just stay stuck. But so many people, David, to repeat the broken record, they come to me, they go, oh yeah, no, I can't afford your training, so I'm definitely going to try the piggy on them. But the other thing is, they sort of say, yeah, but I've got to go and speak to my boss man and get the training. It's like, how much money are you spending on other things that you could really be spending on your own education? I often think, it's like that Sir Benjamin Franklin quote, empty learning into a man's mind and they'll never take it away. Learning pays the best interest.
So I have this thing, right, whereby I think if there's a biscuit in it for you, like do this, ants and elephants, do this, and there's you think if you learn this stuff and you could double your salary, would you want it? And you go, yeah, of course I'd want it. And you go, look, you're gonna have to do something, you're gonna have to do something. The other thing is like, when it comes from a learning perspective, I used to have this thing. I used to have a 20-minute drive to Wellingborough every day and 20-minute drive home. And then I'd do that 5 days a week. Right. And I used to think, imagine you had a magic pill, right? Magic pill, 20 minutes a day, then 20 minutes back, 200 minutes a week, 800 minutes a month, right? And you do that 10 months to the minute, 8,000 minutes, right? And somebody said to you, take this tablet, there's 8,000 minutes worth of learning, right? Would you take the pill? It's like, yeah, turn the fucking radio off then and start listening and start learning, right? Because this is magic. This will change your life. And then imagine you've had an amazing life. And I mean, an amazing life. You made millions, billions, right? Right. And you're sitting there going, oh, that was so good. Right. And you go, right. You go, people should know about this. What do? They write it in a book, right? Or they record an audio book on it. And you go, oh, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't bother reading that. You go, are you a dummy? This is an elephant. This is a fucking elephant. It's not an ant. It's an elephant.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind that there's such amazing information out there, and models and frameworks. You've just talked about Go Big or Go Home, that beautiful book that we'll look and put in the show notes.
Can I give you one more thing on
Please.
it, right? So I worked with a guy called Lanny Basham, who's the world's leading mindset coach, right? And what he said was, you can't get an you can't get a transformational result from an informational product, right? Either a book or an online course. In order to get a real transformation, you need 3 further steps. Application by an expert. You can get all the information in the world, but unless somebody teaches you how to apply it, it's not going to make a difference. Confirmation you're doing it right, so whatever you're doing, and then also consultation, the ability to ask questions and get answers. You can't get transformation without those 3 further steps. So and so book, online course, podcast, they'll give you information. They're informational products, but you need application by an expert. Here's how you apply this to your shit, to what you're doing. Confirmation you're doing it right, and then consultation, how to ask questions and get answers. Then you get a true transformation. So you need to engage with you, St. John, in order to be able to apply what it is you want to apply, or you won't get it.
You're too kind. You're too kind. So, interestingly, it's like all that kind of bullshit around abundance and The Secret, and like, just I just honestly think you've just got to do the work. You can't just read it. You have to go and apply it. You have to test it. You have to bounce it back. And I really like that framework from Lenny. And that was the cybergenetics, isn't it?
So Lanny, Lanny's the world's leading self-image re-engineering coach. He was a little fat kid at school, never going to do anything. They were doing a thing at school about the Olympics, and they were saying who could win a gold medal in the Olympics, and they turned around and said, "I'll tell you who couldn't, Lanny." And Lanny was like, he was a little fat kid who was never going to do anything. He admits this, and then. He talks about when he played basketball, he was always on the bench. He said when he wore glasses and he sat on the outside right field, when they were doing like baseball, and all of a sudden the chance he had to catch the ball, it hit him between the eyes, knocked his glasses off, and he fell over. And he said, and then he came home one night, and they were talking about the Olympics, and they were saying who couldn't win a gold medal, and he spoke to his dad, and he said, "Dad, I want to win a gold medal in the Olympics." And his dad said, "Well, why don't you come shooting with me?" And he said, if I come shooting with you, Dad," he said, well, is that a gold medal sport? And he said, "Yeah, it is." And he said, "Okay." He said, "But here's the thing, do you need to be tall to be good at shooting?" He said, "No." He said, "Do you need to be fast to be good at shooting?" He went, "No." And he says, "All you need to do is be really still." He thought, "Oh, I've done that. I've sat on the bench all my life." So anyway, the story is he goes to the Olympics in Munich in 72, and he chokes in the final of the Olympics because he couldn't believe he was there, and he ends up getting the silver medal, and the silver, what he says, is the best loser. And then he starts studying psychocybernetics, and then he starts speaking to the winners, and then what he noticed is those winners, difference between winning and losing is they think differently, and so he starts thinking different, starts asking different questions, starts studying all the winners, and that's where he comes out with winning in mind, and he's got a business called Mental Management Systems with winning in mind. So I trained with Lanny because he's one of the best winners that there is on the planet, and he's the one that says you can't get transformational result without informational product. You need application by an expert. You need St. John to show you. You need confirmation you're doing it right, and then you need also consultation, the ability to ask questions and get answers. Get that, you can get transformation. And it's an elephant win, because you get somebody that's brilliant at doing what you do. Like my sister was the world pool champion, like world 4 times ladies world pool champion. Like, why? And look her up. Her name's Linda Leadbitter, Leadbitter, 4 times. We grew up with nothing, but we really, what we recognised was winning and losing. Winning's everything. And
Yeah, developing a mind. Like, everyone talks about skill set. So much of what we've spoken about is mindset,
it is.
and training your, like you run your brain. Your brain doesn't, you run your brain. Your brain doesn't run you. And I think, we don't have enough time to work the neuro-linguistic programming and rewiring your brain and neuroplasticity. But the guys understand this basically, that basically you have to get hold. You've got to get you talked about getting your head on right. And you've got to get your head in the game, and you've got to reprogram it. And what you put in your mind is really, really important, because this isn't some bullshit fabrication. There's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of science behind it. We've got fMRI scanners. We know this stuff is for real.
So our chief science officer at Swada is Professor Dean Mobbs. He's the head of cognitive neuroscience at Caltech University. So I know what we do is right. It's not, Dean's from Kettering boy, same town as me. He went to Montague School. I went here. I've known him my whole life. He left school in the first instance without qualifications, then went back and got his qualifications, then went on to work. He went to Cambridge. He worked with Demis, who just won the Nobel Prize on DeepMind. And, Dean's the head of cognitive neuroscience at Caltech. He runs our mental model. So I know about wiring neural plasticity. I mean, look up Dean Mobbs, Caltech, you'll see. So it's not Dave's good ideas, or this might be half right. This is absolutely nailed on. So,
yeah, I absolutely love this. So the listeners, we have dropped a lot of ideas, a lot of frameworks in here. David, where do they go to find you to find out more and mop up more of this stuff? Because there'll be a few of them going, I really want to get my head around this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so we run training. So if they want to do, we've got a learning management system where people teach back what they learn. What ways they learn. Here's my thing, right? That sits behind sales. There's a hidden curriculum that sits behind sales that most people haven't got a clue what it is. So the point of negotiation is there's predictable responses. That's the only thing about negotiation. So, there's different personalities that act differently. There's different stages, rules, influence. There's cognitive biases that we're cognitive bias thing. Neurolinguistic programming is how language works. How you frame a message matters. So, we run training courses at suada.com, so suada.com. Or, you can find me, David Thomson, without a P, Thomson. And, you can learn this stuff. And, I'm delighted because I love sharing my passion. I get my good feeling from helping people. The reason it works is because, the reason I was the top financial advisor in the country is because I could make it really easy for people to understand. We put it in a platform, and then they teach back what they learn, and then all of a sudden they get transformational results. And you learn about the right mental attitude, you learn about opening, closing, framing, neurolinguistic programming, influence on a platform where you learn from other people. So everything that Lanny talked about, we've embedded into technology, and it just works. Just works.
I love the teach back method. Can you just quickly tell people, because I think it's a really important point, why you do that? And I think you've gone over it lightly and politely and diplomatically. There's a very key reason for that. Can you explain it?
So if you think about how your brain works, you think in pictures, not in words. So we use a thing called semiotics, right? Which is how you turn words into images. And then what you do is you create an image for teaching back what it is you've just learned. So if I teach you the definition of a positive mental attitude, we might have plus sign for positive. We might have Jack Nicholson on The Shining or One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest as mental. And then attitude, you've got a number of one things, Eddie Murphy, whatever you want. You can have people with different attitudes, but you teach back with images. And what happens is your brain's wiring its neural pathways. So inside your head, your neural pathways are getting wired. And then when you go over it, those neural pathways get myelinated. And so we teach you about memory and how to remember these things. And ultimately, what we're doing is we're rewiring your self-image. And when your self-image is different and you've taught back what you've learned, what happens is you don't know how you're going to behave in 20 minutes. But if I teach you how this is, all of a sudden your self-image goes, St. John, don't say that anymore. Future pace, use a good bad anchor, contrast. And all of a sudden you start saying things going, oh my God, where are these words coming from? This is just amazing. Use Socrates. And then instead of your case sizes being this big because you're selling stuff at the minimum price, all of a sudden you start selling the whole farm and transforming the whole system because you've made people feel differently because your self-image is different. And it's transformational.
I've got to geek out just for the listeners here. Myelation. Now, just explain that in terms of neural pathways and obviously the sheath that fires and wires together.
Yeah, so imagine you've got a field, a complete green field, right? And you're walking on the same your back garden, and you're walking, and imagine it's covered in snow, right? And all of a sudden you walk up and down the same path 20 times, that snow's gone, and all of a sudden you've got a bold patch up and down there. That's now like a road that's clear, right? And you can see that route that's clear. When you do the same thoughts and you keep going over in the right way, you build stronger neural pathways, stronger like roads like that, and you end up with motorways type roads in your brain.
Highways
that make your brain so strong. I know what Socrates is. And it's why you get righteous about it. So what we need to do is pour in enough of the good stuff, and all the weak, wanky, shitty stuff that's not strong enough. You go, well, yeah, it was me. And people change their mind all of the time. They think, I can't do this. Of course you can. You can do anything you want to do. Is it possible? Do you want it? Work out the how. And just get your head on right and get good people wrapped around you. And all of a sudden, you can do amazing things. And we're capable of so much, but you've got to be the shiny penny.
Yeah, I love it. And synaptic pruning, and we talked about again, things that rhyme and climb, and Dr. Zeus and everything else. And in my little layman's term, is like neurons that fire together wire together. And either you wire the bad stuff, or you can wire the good stuff and get out of the shit and get to the next place, get to the next level. You've just got to take action, and you've got to learn how to do it. And I think really with your Lenny guy, which is beautiful, and I love that story about him. It's not the informational product, the podcast or the audio book or the book or everything else, but you've got to have application by an expert. You've got to have confirmation that you're doing it right, and you've got to have consultation, ask questions. I absolutely love that framework. David, you have been so generous, my man. When you get to New Zealand, if you ever want to jump on a 27-hour flight, we'll go to the craft beery bar and I'll take you to one of the world's best vineyards here. But you have been an absolute legend. You've been so generous. And just listen to this, guys. This guy's pretty bloody good at what he does. He's got a very successful business. He's been very modest about it. He's got an amazing track record. He knows his shit. He jumps on podcasts like this and many others and gives his time freely. For the love of God, do something with the information that he's teaching you, okay? So reach out to him, get his resources. And the other thing is, people that have done well, like David, and I've done okay too. I'm doing okay. We're okay. It's like, we want to see you succeed. We want to see you win. We don't want to see you suffer or struggle, if I could say those words. Do not suffer or struggle unnecessarily. Surround yourself with the right people. I think there's a lot of science. Jim Rohn talks about you're the product of the 5 people you spend most time with. When David was doing his 20-minute commute, he was literally rewiring his brain, and he was using his car as a university, like Zig Ziglar talks about, and he was literally rewiring his brain. Listen to his story. Listen to where he's come from, the broken homes, going in and out of domestic care, terrible for the brain, traumatic for the brain. This guy's rewired his brain. He became number one financial advisor and mortgage broker in the UK. He's got a tremendous business. He's made millions of quid selling his business. The guy knows what he's talking about, like a lot of our guests. David, you've been a bloody gent. There's so much more I would have loved to have spoken to you about. I'm sure we're going to keep in touch and jam, and we might have to get you back on and go deeper on some other stuff. But David, well done, my man. That I just your generosity is so appreciated down here, and I know there'll be some people that are listening here, and you've given them hope, you've given them some direction, you've given them some inspiration, and we thank you for that. You've been awesome.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. And, I genuinely wish you guys all the best, sincerely. And if I can help in any way, then just put David Thomson, Thomson, Swader into LinkedIn, help me up. And, if you've got questions, I'll answer your questions. And, or send me an email, david@swader.com, but genuinely, it's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. It's good energy. And I think probably what's made it good for me is you explaining to me, the audience, who these people are, the normal people. And my one thing I would say to everybody is, imagine you're out in the universe, right? And you're out in the universe and somebody'd say to you, what do you want? You go, get me another human. Now, you wouldn't care if they were black like me, if they're white, they were yellow, they were green, they were old, they were young, they were female, male, disabled. You go get me another. And if you met them, you'd be delighted. You wouldn't care if they didn't speak your language, because we're in this together. This is our life. We're all in this together. And the more people that we've got in our life to share it with, to have memories with, to say, the more love we're surrounded with, the better the world is.
Yeah, man. Beautifully said, my friend. Brother, thank you so much. Thank you for those wonderful book recommendations, because I absolutely love reading. So I will absolutely flow through those. So David, you've been a gentleman, man. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.